Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here I hope you can see those who are watching through television, but those who are here can see for sure that this is a beautifully renovated and revitalized Union Station for what has been a long-awaited day. And I'm pleased to be joined on this occasion and will extend my thanks for not the last time in these proceedings this morning to the Member of Parliament, James Maloney, who's the chair of the 416 caucus, and the Government of Canada has been a steadfast partner in this endeavor. Stan Cho, the Associate Minister of Transportation for the province of Ontario, and the Government of Ontario again has been a steadfast partner with the city in this endeavor. Phil Verster, the President and Chief Executive Officer at Metrolinx, and of course Metrolinx has their key transit hub here and have been very much, of course, involved as we've tried to revitalize Union Station, but still make sure that it was an even better working transit terminal, but also continued to function as a transit terminal during the construction, and Phil's been terrific on that. And then, of course, a large number of members of our city staff, because this is a building that is owned by the City of Toronto. We're proud of it because it's a heritage building, a very iconic heritage building. And this has been a massive project that has been complicated and difficult, but it's a very proud and happy day for them as well. This has been an incredibly challenging revitalization. But today represents a very good day for not just for Toronto and for the City of Toronto, but for the entire GTHA, because thousands of people come through Union Station on their travels. And it's a good day for Canada because in the end, so much of the country's economy rests in the City of Toronto. There are people around the rest of the country that don't like to hear me say that, but it's the reality. And having this major transportational terminal, and it's much more than that now, functioning well and being able to be prepared for the future is hugely important to the dynamism and the recovery of the economy. The Union Station revitalization is now at last complete, and the last piece of this revitalization, namely the Bay Concourse, is opening to the public today. I'm not going to get into a long history of the project. Much of the history and the frustrations predated my time as mayor. When I came to office as Joshi Scioli, who is our senior city staff member on this as a deputy city manager, she will tell you, I just came into a room and said, look, whatever the history's been, whatever the challenges have been, whoever's fault it might have been, I don't really care. I just want to get it done. And it was done in the context of making sure for Metrolinx we were a good landlord and had the very best in terms of transportation, but it was also in the broader context of the excitement that's going to come from this building and all that it now has in it, including incredible retail and other things that'll make this very much a center of the community and not just a transportation terminal. But the bottom line is this: Union Station is now ready to more completely welcome people back to downtown Toronto, just as we reopen the city in the wake of the pandemic and try to move ahead with getting the city back to where it needs to be economically and in every other respect. And this was no easy task. Throughout the revitalization, the most remarkable thing is that Union Station has remained open to provide both train passengers, GO train passengers, and TTC customers, all of whom pass through here, with the continued availability of service to them. And it's kind of like renovating a historic old heritage house. Think of it that way, and living in the house during the entire renovation. You'd think, well, are there going to be days when the plumbing's turned off and we can't have a shower because they're working on the plumbing? Well, we couldn't afford to have a situation where there was just days where GO train service was shut down, or VIA trains couldn't come in and out of here, or where the TTC couldn't operate. There have been different things that have happened that have caused people some inconvenience, but the bottom line is we kept the building open, we kept the transit running, and we completed an incredibly complex renovation on a historic building where we had to maintain, and we're proud to maintain, the heritage and the history of this building. And so I want to thank the commuters and thank the customers and others and residents of this area for their patience as we pushed through getting this very complex project completed. I was telling a story earlier this morning when I was on my first tour here as mayor and was being told what a complicated project this was and how difficult it had been and how frustrating and so on. And one of the examples that was given to me was a conduit, which is kind of a passageway that ran through the roof carrying all kinds of cables. And they said, well, one of the challenges was on no plan anywhere from any previous change that had been made to this building was there any evidence of what those cables were, who they served, what they connected, what service they were providing to people. And so they said their only alternative was just to cut the cables and see who phoned, because their computer went down or their phone went down. And truth is, when they cut the cables, nobody phoned. But that's what happens with an old building. And anybody out there who's renovated an old house knows that there are going to be surprises when you're renovating an old building. I can tell you that going all the way back to the long-standing start of these renovations, there were three purposes in mind, and there were three things that lay behind the city's purchase of this building, which turns out to have been an incredibly wise purchase in the year 2000 by those who were in charge of the city at that time. Number one, to promote this as a hub for various modes of transportation, including GO, TTC, and VIA. As we try to move this city to a city that is a 21st century city where people have transit options and use transit instead of driving their cars to get downtown and to get around, that's obviously a prime purpose. Secondly, to preserve this as the heritage building that it is. You need only walk through the Great Hall upstairs to see what an extraordinary building this is. And there are not buildings built like it anymore, as hard as we might try. And then finally, and very importantly, to revitalize it and to broaden out its purpose so that it could become a destination where people would want to come, not just to get on a train, but to come and to shop and to just come and to see it and experience it, much like people do with the Eaton Centre in many respects in Toronto. It's one of our most visited attractions. I believe that in its finished state, we have accomplished all three of these goals. Union Station is and will continue to be the most important transportation hub serving the entire GTHA. Combined, the new Bay and York concourses, and we're on the Bay concourse here that's opening officially today, they will serve at peak time when the ridership rebuilds itself after the pandemic, 500,000 people a day, which is extraordinary. It's a cherished heritage building and a civic landmark. It will continue to be those things. And on the revitalization front, now that it's done, it contains more than triple the original size of the GO concourse space for commuters, an additional 160,000 square feet of top-end retail space, which includes the new retail level under the concourses, the Union Food Court, the upcoming Fresh Market, and an overall very enhanced retail service. Very much like what I saw when I was in Tokyo, where the Tokyo station is as much a place to come and shop as it is a place to come and catch a train, and you want it all to be put together. It will have a revitalized Via Rail concourse and Panorama Lounge, the front street glass moat cover, enhanced path underground access, and 2 new bike parking stations. So those are all things we've been able to do to revitalize this building. This all helps us all collectively, Metrolinx, TTC, everybody, via to enhance the level of service we can provide to commuters and passengers, and allows us to address the demand for increased services at Union Station, including the robust transit systems that it serves. And it creates new and exciting experiences for those visiting Union. And you know, it's not confined to tourists. Since this project began, literally tens and tens of thousands of people have come to live within very short walking distance of Union Station. And we're optimistic they will use it very much as a center in their own community, in a place where we need more of these kinds of things downtown. There is no better time to have this actually happen. We might have wanted to have it happen sooner for a bunch of reasons, but there's no better time than to have it happen as the city is reopening itself and beginning what I know is going to be a robust recovery from the effects of the pandemic. This hub in all of its incarnations is going to help us improve our economic competitiveness. It is going to help increase economic activity, and it is going to help us meet our climate change goals by making it more inviting for people to use public transportation. And these are all mutually beneficial goals for all of the people of the GTHA, and in particular the City of Toronto. And you know, I'll say it again, when Toronto does well, the whole province does well, and the whole country does well. It's one of the reasons I'm proudest to be the mayor of Toronto, because by doing well here, we can make a difference in this whole country, which is something that's important to all of us. And transit plays a big role in that. So now Union Station is a place where people can, yes, get on a train or a bus or various other modes of transportation in the surrounding area. Tourists can choose to hang out or to shop or to dine. People can come and experience unique arts and cultural installations here, even have performances here, and access the very best of public transit. So I want to just say thanks to a few people who made this possible. First and foremost, I want to thank the other governments. They have been our partners in this throughout. Both the Government of Canada and the Government of Ontario have contributed to the cost, which has been extensive, north of $800 million to complete this project over these many years. And I want to just say to them, thank you very much for being with us as partners in something that will be to the benefit of Ontario and Canada. Secondly, I would like to say thank you to our public servants in the City of Toronto who have worked tirelessly on this. Josie Cioli, who I mentioned earlier, is a deputy city manager. She wasn't when she first got involved in this project, but she has been taking on those increased responsibilities over the time. And she was the one that I had come into a room when I first became mayor and after my first tour and said, we just have to get this done. And she's worked and worked and worked to make sure that that has happened. Pat Matozo, who took me on that tour and pointed to those conduits that were mysterious conduits that went, we didn't know where they came from or where they went. He has served in different capacities, but is presently the Executive Director of Corporate Real Estate. Frank Molinari, who's taking us on this tour today, Project Director of Major Initiatives. They have been hugely important as public servants in the City of Toronto, overseeing getting this done. I also want to say thank you to Metrolinx and to Osmington. Osmington will be a name that you haven't heard, but they are our partners in this venture as well, and they're the people that are putting together what I know is going to be spectacular retail. It isn't, to be candid, when you walk through these concourses before and there was a Cinnabon place, I can remember the smell as you'd walk into Union Station and everybody would want to have one to eat, and various other things like that. But this is going to be, yes, those things will all still be there, but there's going to be a lot more than that. So this will be a destination for people to come, even if they're not taking a train ride anywhere. And I want to thank them and Metrolinx, who have been great partners. We have so much to do with Metrolinx on all the transit we're building, billions and billions of dollars of transit to serve people in the city. We're working well. Phil Verster, the CEO, is an excellent person to work with. He's a get things done guy, and we're relying on that as we go forward to build the transit and as we got this done. And so, again, it proves what I have said many, many times. You've heard me say, which is when governments work together with people like Metrolinx and Osmington and Via Rail and everybody else, great things can happen. When we work together, when we collaborate, when we cooperate, when we put our money together to make things happen. And this has been an all hands on deck approach throughout the revitalization. And I know that everybody that's here to celebrate today can take a share of the credit for the fact that we've got here. And so on that note, with my profound thanks to these other governments, I want to introduce the Member of Parliament for Etobicoke Lakeshore, a person who has been a great friend to Toronto, a great partner for Toronto in his capacity as chair of the GTA Government Caucus for the Government of Canada, Jamie Maloney. Jamie?
Thank you, Mayor Tory. It's always a privilege and a pleasure to join you at events like this. In fact, it's been fairly regular of late, and I have people in my office who try to figure out where I'm supposed to be hour to hour, day to day. Now on Monday mornings, we just call the mayor's office and say, what's going on this week? So it's always glad to be here with you. And Associate Minister Cho, it's a pleasure to join you today. And Phil Verster, the CEO of Metrolinx. Look, today's a great day. I mean, Union Station is an iconic building. As the mayor said, it's a destination, it's a launching point, it's a tourist attraction, it's a place to go. How many times have you watched a movie and you think you're watching Grand Central Station or the train station in Chicago or somewhere in Europe, and it's like, no, that's Union Station. And there's a reason for that. It is a beautiful building. It is historic. It has, it's an elegant, it has certain majesty about it. And that's the reason why. People come to Toronto, and it's a place to go. And it's going to be a place to go, again, as the mayor has pointed out quite rightly. People who are commuting to Toronto, they come to Union Station. People who are leaving Toronto, they go out of Union Station. It is the hub, it is the heartbeat of this transit community in Toronto. And that's important because we're at a point in time now where it's more critical than ever because we're emerging from this pandemic. We're not quite through it yet, and people need to continue to adhere to the protocols and make sure you get vaccinated. But at the end, and the mayor talked about this great relationship the three levels of government have, and he's quite right. And that's something that I'm very proud of because during the pandemic, the federal government, the provincial government, and the municipal governments have worked together. They put aside all of their differences. I personally share the mayor's view, and I hope this is something that continues going forward, because you can see what gets done and the positive results that flow from that type of relationship, and that's what you're seeing now. At the end of the day, me and the other 25 members of parliament, federal members of parliament in Toronto, who I'm here to represent, and Minister McKenna, the city councilors, the mayor, the provincial members, we're ambassadors. We're ambassadors for our community. We're ambassadors for the city of Toronto. And our mutual goal, our shared goal, is to make sure that this city continues to be one of the greatest places in North America, and Union Station is at the heart of that. So as we emerge from this pandemic, I ask people to, I'm going to exhaust this metaphor now about being the heart. I'm going to say, people, come to Union Station, have a look around, see how beautiful it continues to be, see the great work that all these people have done, and then get on the subway and go up to King Street, go out to Scarborough, go to North Toronto, and go to Etobicoke, and go visit our local shop owners, our businesses, because they are the people that keep this city going. They are the people that make this city so vibrant, and we need to come out of this thing stronger than we were before. And thanks to the leadership of all three levels of government and Mayor Tory, that's going to happen. So thank you very much. I'm now going to turn the mic over to Associate Minister Cho, who like myself, shares this vision, and he's here to share some words about this great building today as well. So thanks very much.
Well, thank you very much, MP Maloney, and it's a true honor to be here. I was super, super excited on the way down, not just because we're opening the Bay Concourse and this is an exciting time, but because it's well-timed. Our beloved Blue Jays, Canada's baseball team, of course, returns here Friday, and I can't wait to see this a hub of activity. In fact, for this announcement, I actually was going to wear my Blue Jays jersey, but my wife said no. She won that argument, as you can see. In fact, she wins every argument. But the point is that this is going to be a real exciting development here for the city of Toronto. And we have to remember that Union Station is the gates. They are the gates to the fourth largest city in North America, the best city in the world. And I don't just say that because I'm born and raised here. It's because we know this is a world-class city. We have millions of visitors every single year to our great city. It truly is the economic engine of Ontario and our country. And there's a reason people come here, because Toronto has a lot more to offer outside of our sports teams. It's a world-class destination, and this is a world-class transit hub. And it's really a lot more than that. And we can see that, and it's evidenced by, as MP Maloney and Mayor Tory referenced, that collaborative effort from all levels of government across all party lines. And I agree with MP Maloney. This is an example of what we can accomplish when we put differences aside and remember that developing this transit hub is good for our city, it's good for our province, it's great for our country. And our government has responded with almost a $192 million investment. And we thank our federal partners and our hardworking staff at the city for treating this as the priority that it should be. Public transit will always be a priority for our government, and that's going to continue. And as the mayor said, this has access to the TTC, to GO, and to VIA, and very much connects our country. And what better timing can we ask for to open the Bay Concourse and as we move through COVID-19 and as we put that in our rearview mirror and as more and more people get vaccinated, this is truly an exciting time for our city. It is truly an exciting time as we move into the economic recovery. And I'm so honored that we could be here to announce this amazing center. And for those of you watching at home who haven't been down here yet, please get down here. It's absolutely stunning. Puts Grand Central Station to shame, in my opinion. This is truly something that we can all be proud of as we move through. Get out there, take advantage of Union Station, all that has to offer. Go Jays, go. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the talented and hardworking CEO, President of Metrolinx, Phil Verster.
If I can echo what Mayor Tory said, not only is this an iconic building, but what we do here is great for Toronto, it's great for Ontario, and it's also great for Canada. What's so special about the new facility, which triples the space that we have for people to flow through these spaces towards the TTC, to VIA, to GO, is that the great service that we can get from the retail facilities gives a fantastic experience for our customers and riders. And the more the benefits are for people to use transit, the more transit has an impact on the economy. very special thing all along that I can see about this project was how important the collaboration with the city is. And Josie's name's been mentioned, Chris Murray, Tracy Cook. Our colleagues in the city are true partners for us. And we've got difficult stuff we're dealing with every day. And the difficult stuff gets fixed. And I think one of the things that's not been said enough is how the facility union kept operating throughout the build period. And some of the tasks that were completed, some of the construction were completed, had all of the potential to be very disruptive. But together as a team, we made it all work. And for that, thanks again to our partners. And May projects like this keep on coming in, keep on being completed, and let's keep on building a better transit solution for Toronto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We will now begin the formal Q&A. First up, we have...
We're doing that before we cut the ribbon. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Q&A
first,
first.
yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Just want to make sure I have my instructions right.
Okay. First up, we have Courtney Heels from CB24.
Good morning. I'll start with Mr. Verster, if I can, with my first question. Sir, some significant delays with this revitalization project. Can you speak to what the biggest challenge would have been for making this happen, and what was the total cost?
So good to understand how this project worked, and I'll explain a little bit of the context. If you think of the ceiling above us, the concrete slab, Metrolinx's work was all above the slab. The work in the concourse itself, the city managed for many years. And so the question about the total cost is sort of not really a Metrolinx question, but it's sort of a broader question. But can I just say, the city has dealt with extremely difficult challenges in the supply chain. 2 contractors, at least, prime contractors that had to deliver, and we won't call them out here, had significant financial challenges. So I think that's all part of what had to be overcome in this whole build process. And in the end, Metrolinx procured the Bay Concourse and the York Concourse from the city. And our expenses relative to the wayfinding and the Presto devices, very limited scope in part of the overall scope. But I think there's a press release on total cost and the like, and I think that can be made available afterwards. We'll talk to the city's press people and do that. Thank you. Do you have a follow-up?
My follow-up is for the mayor, if I may.
Just before you go to the follow-up, can I just follow up on that? I think people have to understand, and again, a lot of the history of this preceded my being here, and it's just, but the complexity of the project where you had the columns that you can see behind me here are columns that go all the way down and actually support structures across which trains run every day, many trains. And I think people will understand just that visual imagery of a column that has to be renovated and extended down further below the ground so that we could have the retail we're going to have, which is also just behind me. And the complexity of the thing I've learned since I have been mayor has caused, frustrations and delays, but it got done. The main thing is we're here today and we're opening it. The cost is north of $800 million, but at 864, I think is the number, million. But in the end, if you look at the return this will pay in terms of improved transportation, economic activity, and so on, I think it's going to be a good investment. It's a bigger investment than we had thought, but I think a lot of people out there who've tried to renovate heritage buildings and live in them at the same time will understand some of the challenge of getting these things done, but it's done.
My question for you, sir, the fact that we're seeing the city reopen, this announcement today, all the result of the high vaccination rates, but we're also now seeing in the Taylor Massey neighborhood, the rate for the first vaccination very low, below the rate of 80% for the rest of the city for first dose. How concerned are you that that neighborhood is going to be left behind and not meet the 80% or even higher and be fully vaccinated?
Well, I can tell you right now, there will not be one neighborhood, there will not be one building, as far as we're concerned, that will be left behind. And our entire strategy for this weekend, last weekend we were in North York addressing under-vaccinated postal codes with a big event at Mel Lastman Square. This weekend in the Taylor Massey general neighborhood, we're adopting a different approach, and we've picked 6 plazas with grocery stores in them where we know people do their shopping from that neighborhood that is probably 15-20% under vaccinated compared to the rest of the city. And we're going to have clinics right there, right in front of or inside the grocery stores. We're going to encourage people to go to them by having local respected doctors make phone calls to 20,000 people to say, this is your chance to get out and get vaccinated. They're people that are trusted and that are known. We'll be doing those calls in the language that people speak, their first language. So we're not leaving people behind. It is too important for the safety of those people, for the safety of their neighbors and coworkers and others, and for the well-being of the economy that we get those numbers up. We're doing really well as a city. I'm proud of how well people have responded to the efforts we've made with the different clinics and pop-ups and different things we've been doing, but we have some distance to go. And so we're just going to keep at it, and nobody's going to be left behind if we can see our way clear to get them vaccinated.
Thank you, Courtney. Next up, we have Isha Bhargava from CBC. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Mayor Tory. My question for you is that Toronto is focusing on the Taylor-Massey neighborhood in the East End to encourage vaccine uptake. What is preventing people in this neighborhood from getting vaccinated, and what other efforts are being made to get people in this community vaccinated?
We are leaving no stone unturned. And if you look at the question of why people are not getting vaccinated, there are many different explanations. It can include a language barrier. It can include a hesitancy about vaccines generally. It can include just the fact that sometimes people in some of these neighborhoods find themselves marginalized in every respect, to the extent they don't find it easy to access the mass immunization clinics that we have been setting up and relying upon for much of our efforts. So that is why we have done as much careful thought and research as we can, and have developed something like the exercise coming up this weekend, where we're going to have the 6 plazas and stores where we know people congregate and do their shopping, combined with the phone calls from the trusted doctors, combined with people knocking on doors to get people out to get vaccinated, because we're not going to accept the fact that any barrier should rest in the way of these people who are good, hardworking Torontonians, just like everybody else, but maybe have some extra challenges getting themselves vaccinated. So we're going to help them to make sure that happens. And I think those efforts, as with our other efforts at the grassroots with our ambassadors and community organizations and led by the Michael Garron Hospital and the East End Health Partners, will be successful.
Follow up?
Thank you. Yep, my follow-up is that California and New York City have announced on Monday that they would require all government employees to get the coronavirus vaccine or face weekly COVID-19 testing. Is this something you would consider doing in Toronto?
Well, the bottom line that I know, and I've said this very clearly and very forthrightly, which is the status quo is not going to see us through. We're trying to go through a very complicated economic and health exercise, health being the most important thing. And we're doing it without any guidelines or anything to help us through that. And so I think the notion that we're somehow all just going to sort this out, everybody on their own, is not acceptable. I don't find it acceptable. I don't find it practical. And as a result, I have suggested a number of times now that, without getting into a philosophical and political debate, this isn't about that to me. This is about the health and well-being of people and the economy. And it means that the governments have a responsibility to bring forward a plan. And I believe, and I don't mean to cause anybody any offense in saying this, the government that is best suited in light of their responsibility for health and for employment-related matters, and in light of the fact they're in possession of all the information about who got vaccinated, to best convene a meeting where we sit down, all 3 governments, together with unionized unions and employers, and public institutions like colleges and school boards, and sort this out, is the government of Ontario. And I believe such a meeting should be convened, and we should get to it, not as a matter of settling a political or philosophical debate. It's not about that. We've got to put that to a side and say people need answers, so that we avoid mass confusion and we avoid anything that represents a threat to our health. Because look, make no mistake, this pandemic is not over. We can see from what's going on in the US and countries in Europe that the Delta variant is out there as a real threat. And we cannot afford to have a situation where people are returning to work as we want them to do, and returning to go to the theater and to restaurants and to places of entertainment and sporting events, and that they're uncertain about what the rules are or who should be doing what. We need to sort that out.
Thank you, Isha. Next up, we have Miriam Idhadi from Radio Canada. Go ahead.
Hello, Mayor. My first question to you is, New York City on Monday ordered government workers to get vaccinated against COVID-19, or they will have to face regular testing. Is Toronto considering applying the same approach, and why?
we have been discussing the overall environment within which people will return to work. And that's had a number of different aspects to it, including when people return to work and in what numbers and how intensively they do. In other words, we have some sort of a hybrid model where people will work partly from home and partly at the office. Many city workers have been working throughout the pandemic on the front lines. So, of course, they've been at work the whole time. In fact, most. I would just say to you at this point in time, it is one of the reasons why I think we have to have a sit down to discuss the conditions in which people will work, because you can imagine what could happen either with members of the public coming into contact with city employees or even city employees coming into contact with each other, that there need to be some understandings as to the circumstances in which people will be working. And so I will just say to you, there is nothing to say at this time about that, but that all of these things are part of a broader discussion I believe we have to have immediately, involving not just the City of Toronto acting on its own. One thing I've learned during this pandemic for sure is that we operate as the City of Toronto, as yes, the biggest city, 3 million people within a region of 6 or 7 million people that involve many other municipalities with a common media market. So when you have a patchwork quilt of policies all over the place of one city versus another, one set of employees versus another, it is incredibly confusing for people. And we've seen that during the pandemic. And I would like to see us avoid that. And the only way we can avoid that is to have a common set, I hope, of rules that we might adopt together to decide on how we go forward on this, so that you don't have this kind of confusion or even divisiveness that comes from somebody thinking their rules are worse than somebody else's or better than somebody else's.
Follow up?
And my follow-up question is, Montreal's public health is calling the approximate 30,000 youths aged 12 to 17 who have not yet been vaccinated to encourage them to get their shot before September. Do you think Toronto Public Health, or do you think the city should do the same?
Toronto Public Health, and we are having one of our regular, command table meetings tomorrow morning. And what we're really focused on now is every tactic and every strategy we can employ to make sure that those groups that are under-vaccinated for a variety of reasons, whether it be neighborhoods, as we discussed earlier, or whether it be groups of people who might be vulnerable for a reason such as going back to school or going back to work, get vaccinated. And so I can just assure you that Toronto Public Health, which gives us the advice on which we act to set priorities like this, are on top of this, and we will be hearing from them, and we'll have more to say after our meeting tomorrow.
Thank you, Miriam. Next up, we have Ben Spur from the Toronto Star. Go ahead, Ben.
This is likely to be a transportation question. I'll get off the hook here, but I shouldn't presume, Ben. Go ahead.
Possibly. Yeah, I do have a question. I think it's best placed for Phil Verster.
Perfect.
I understand that obviously the revitalization project here has reached a milestone, but there is some work that still needs to be done on at track level, I believe, and perhaps some other work. So can you just clarify, is there still some outstanding work that needs to be done at Union Station, and how long should the public expect to see some kind of construction work going on there?
Great question, Ben. So this is a very important building block today to get this concourse open. But we need to do a lot of work above our ceiling here at track level to increase the capacity of Union Station. And forgive me if I give a little bit of a geeky answer, but just explain this. Currently, we have got 12 platforms with each 2 platform faces upstairs. And when you look upstairs, you see these platforms are extremely narrow. And currently our capacity is not really how many trains can we get through Union Station, but how many people can we get off the platforms into the concourses and out to the city, and out to TTC and out to VIA. And what we see here today in this concourse is a fabulous building block. But if you think of what we have here, from elevators to staircases up to platform level, is potentially where the next bottleneck is going to be. So we've got a program over the next 8 to 10 years to systematically, again, without interrupting the flow of train services, to change the 12 platforms at the top level here to 7 broad platforms with 4 additional what we call pocket tracks that allows for a doubling of the number of trains that can literally flow through the station. And the reason why more trains would be able to flow is more passengers would be able to get off the trains and get off the platforms and get down into the concourse. And to Ben's question, which is a great question, there are more elevators and there are more staircases, which as part of that program, we will liven up and adjust in the years to come. But on top of that, we're building what we call the Union Station Enhancement Project, which we've again worked very closely with the city on the southern end of Union Station. And we're going to add a concourse, a south concourse that connects York and Bay concourses as well in the years to come. And then while I'm aware how people feel about how long work has taken at Union, I don't want people to be alarmed by the fact that we've got more work to do, but we have more work to do. And the beauty of the work that we're doing is the whole GO expansion program is elevating our number of trains that we run per week as GO from around 2,000 before COVID to around 6,000 in 10 years' time. And as we run 6,000 trains, and many of them come into Union. And so this whole expansion is part of the constant growth in what we're doing and how we meet the transit requirements of the future. Follow-up?
Yes, sir. I do have a follow-up. This one is for the mayor, actually. Mr. Mayor, throughout the COVID crisis, the TTC with the low ridership has been bailed out with help from the federal and provincial governments. With things getting back a bit to normal, the TTC is still facing what could be a long-term downturn in ridership and revenue. Once the kind of immediate emergency is over, what do you think is the financial future of the TTC? Will it require steady operational funding, the feds and the provincial government? And are you having those conversations at the moment?
I've had conversations both with the, excuse me, let me start again. I've had conversations both with the Deputy Prime Minister and with the Premier about the fact that the ridership on the TTC is unlikely to return to normal levels or previous levels that we experienced before the pandemic for a while yet. And that looking ahead into 2022 and probably 2023, it is likely that some continued assistance, we called it restart funding during the pandemic itself, will be required. And I will just say I'm very grateful for the fact, and we couldn't have without them carried on the operation of the TTC for the essential workers and others who continued to use it. And we will continue to operate the TTC, but it will require help. We will obviously continue to support the TTC as well as a city government. I think our subsidy this year runs in the neighborhood of $800 million, and that will, continue. But we will probably need continued help for a couple of years to come as ridership begins to recover and does indeed recover.
Thank you, Ben. We just have time for one more question from Courtney at CB24. Go ahead.
Thank you. My last question. Another story we're following today, sir, regarding the coyote that's roaming the neighborhood in St. Clair and Borden. Residents are pretty concerned. There have already been a couple of close calls. Are you able to share what the city is doing about that? And do you have concerns hearing about how close this animal has gotten to kids and pets?
I've come to understand that having wildlife in the city, it's a blessing for us to have all kinds of wildlife, and some are more, more welcome than others. I mean, the raccoons, as much as people are, frustrated by them, are a sign of a healthy city in some respects. And the coyotes are the same thing. The very fact an animal like that can live in the city is a healthy thing for our environment. But when those animals start to pose a risk to people, or to pets for that matter, but especially to people, you have to be concerned. And the people in that neighborhood are afraid. I understand why, because you've seen aggressive behavior from, I think they think one particular coyote, but from a group of coyotes in that area in Scarborough. What we're doing, we're working with the Ministry of Natural Resources and some of the community-led organizations that are expert in these things to try and monitor the behavior and try and affect the behavior as much as possible. There are things one can do to discourage the coyotes from inhabiting neighborhoods and being around people. The number one thing people can do, and I plead with them to please cooperate with us in this regard, not feed the coyotes. There are people who think it's cute or helpful somehow or compassionate to feed the coyotes when in fact it's exactly the opposite. And it encourages them to engage then in behavior that is abnormal, which is to want to be around people to be fed. And we've had that extending to people, and I understand they've been trying to protect the the grave side, the resting place of their loved ones in the cemetery nearby, and thinking that'll keep the coyotes away, and they feed them. We've had photographers. I'm not talking about journalists. I'm talking about amateur photographers who fed the coyotes, and all that causes is for them to become dependent on that food and to come back. And then when they don't get the food, they get frustrated themselves and they start to engage in some of the behavior we've seen. So we're working in a sensitive way, an environmentally sensitive way, with the Ministry of Natural Resources and the animal control people to address the coyote issue in that area, and people can help us immeasurably if they stop feeding the coyotes. Under no circumstances should they feed the coyotes or any other animals for that matter. They'll find their own food. If they get food from us as human beings, they come to want to be closer to us, and that can cause the kinds of problems we've seen. So please help us in that regard.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you.